there in comic book land. My name is George Serrano, aka The Don, and if you're listening to this, you could only be here for one reason, and that's a brand new episode of the Major Issues Podcast, brought to you by ComicBook Clique. And as always, I am never alone. Sir, please introduce yourself.
Ooh, I am back. Uno más. I am your Cloudus Maximus.
Cloudus Maximus is here in studio, and it's a jolly good time because we are here to celebrate Halloween. Halloween. How do you feel about Halloween? Are you a big Halloween fan, Cloudus?
I am a big candy fan.
You're a big candy fan? What's one of the earliest costumes you can remember getting dressed up in?
My first was probably, I was a big pumpkin. My parents dressed me up as a big pumpkin.
Ah, pumpkin.
But I was...
The great pumpkin?
A pumpkin.
Okay. I think you would be a great pumpkin.
But my favorite would have to be that one time. Not even that one time, because I did it for 2 years in a row when I was small as well. It was I was the Gold Ranger.
The Gold Ranger. One of my earliest costumed memories is I remember going to the costume shop. I think it was like Party City or something like that in Brooklyn, and I wanted to be Spider-Man so bad. The animated series was out there. It was killing it. Big fan of that. So I went and I tried on the Spider-Man outfit, dug it. I'm like, oh, I could do this. Put on the mask and realized I couldn't breathe in it. And I was like, I'm not doing this. I'm not gonna be Spider-Man this year. It's funny when you realize your limitations as a kid. And then I was just like, that is not one of them. I need something I could breathe out of. But I've definitely gotten better since then. But Halloween is such a fun time of the year, I like it more for just the different, like you say, like costume parties, the Halloween parade here in New York and stuff. And if you're a horror junkie, this is your holiday. You know, scary movies,
Dia de los Muertos,
all that stuff, out of control. Halloween has made a resurgence. The movie itself has come back to commemorate this Halloween.
And everybody that's seen it, that I've known that's seen it so far, has said it is pretty damn good.
That's true. Any desire to see it? Are you a horror junkie?
Yes. I also heard the guy that's Michael. He has reprised the original guy that was Michael has reprised his original role.
Yeah, I know the director, Mr. John Carpenter.
And I ended up finding out he only played Michael twice.
Crazy, right? Well, there's like
bananas.
There's like 8 Halloween movies.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of them that and supposedly there's a bunch of them that don't even they're not in the continuity. They've X-Men their Halloween continuity there. But when thinking about horrifying characters and stuff like that, I was really thinking hard of what we could cover for the Halloween edition of Major Issues, and I figured we would cover probably what is the most horrific protagonist to have his own comic. I mean, there's a bunch, but when I think of like full on like metal and 90s and horror, I think of Spawn, the creation from Image Comics, which was so popular in the 90s that it even got its own film in 1997, which we'll be reviewing right here as part of the Major Issues Podcast. But before we do that, did you have a history with the character? When do you remember first seeing Spawn?
The only thing that that Spawn was famous for me, I've never really dove into the comics, and I heard the comics were pretty damn good.
Yeah.
Was the movie?
Yes.
I was a big fan of the movie, being super casual at the time and not reading comics at the time either, and not knowing he also had his own comic. I was a real big fan of the movie, and I still am.
We'll get there because I remember being a big fan of the movie. I rewatched the movie. I think it has a lot of problems, but I would love to bounce some of those off of you when we get into the movie. But I decided that for the most part, the movie was the only touchstone I had for the character. I had really no background. I had seen some of the animated series, but it was very dark and also adult, so I didn't get it as a kid.
I heard the series won like an Emmy or something. One of those awards.
One of those TV late night cartoon awards that pop up so randomly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember thinking the character looked cool, but I only knew it from the movie, and I didn't understand like Marvel and DC and
Right,
Image.
right, right.
I didn't get any of that, so I don't get where I thought he was.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought maybe it was just some side character somewhere. But I decided to do some real deep dives into the character, his origins, and some of those things that make him stand out. So I figured we would do our audience a service. We're giving them some Spawn education. Right at the top, Spawn number 1 comes out in 1992 and sells about 1.7 million copies. 1.7 million copies. I don't even know. I don't even think there was 1.7 million comic readers at the time, so people were just buying 50 a piece,
right.
and saying like this is gonna be the new hotness. And it is Spawn's really the first big original hit from Image Comics. I often say, because of my pro wrestling knowledge, that Image Comics is sort of kind of the ECW to Marvel and DC's WCW and WWE. So you had your two big heads going at it, and the little engine that could, just like ECW, Image Comics is formed by various creators, one of them being Todd McFarlane, the creator of Spawn. Various creators from Marvel leaving in a mass exodus, mostly because they want creative control of their own characters. The idea being, if you create a character under Marvel or under DC, they own that character. If you want to see how funny that gets, listen to our Bill Finger episode where we talk about the co-creator of Batman and how he basically got no credit for doing so because of how weird those contracts are. So you have a bunch of people leave Marvel because they want to make their own creations and they want to get paid for their own creations. One of them also being Rob Liefeld from Deadpool fame, creator of Deadpool. But those guys go over, they create Image Comics, and Todd McFarlane creates Spawn. And Spawn, just the same way that Image was like ECW, Spawn is like the beginnings of the Attitude Era. Like that character is so 90s and so edge, and what words would you use to describe Spawn? Like just gothic and brooding, and he's just so edgy. Like spikes and skulls, and
in all his badassery.
So this was a big hit for Image, especially 1.7 copies.
Comics. That's
a lot. Yeah. And this is one issue of a comic. This thing is 21 pages, a tenth of a pound or something like that, flying off shelves. Once that happens, this guy has, besides getting his own feature film, Mr. Spawn, has been in Taco Bell commercials. He's been in video games. I owned a video game with Spawn in it. I think it was on PlayStation.
I owned a toy.
You had a toy?
Now that I think about it, yeah, I had a toy.
He was a lockable character in Soul Calibur, which is also kind of cool there. But he was all over when you consider the fact that this was from a lesser known comic publisher at the time, Image. They put a lot behind Spawn to get him out there and into the minds of people like us who weren't even reading books, but we were aware that this character existed. So I thought that was really, really cool that there was such an early push for this character. I mean, but then again, like I said again, 1.7 million copies. If you put that in ticket sales, right? That seems like an easy way to make a buttload of cash
on rap albums.
Yes, exactly. If this was any other medium, you'd be like, "Come on, these are." I mean, it did move numbers. There's no doubt about it. But the story of Spawn follows Al Simmons, an African American expert marksman and tactician, the best assassin basically on Earth, who saved the president from an assassination attempt himself. Check that out. Eventually, he gets recruited to a covert black ops team, and he does the mistake of questioning his superiors. Like, hey, what's going on here? I get that I'm like a real good killer of men, but you guys are up to some shady stuff. And he starts to try to do his own research behind the covert ops team that has hired him. And his commanding officer, Jason Wynn, starts to notice that he's getting a little bit suspicious. So he hires Al's best friend / partner, Bruce Stinson, a.k.a. Chapel, to murder him. And he does so in a fiery inferno. The whole shady government agency double-crossing thing is also very 90s.
Yes.
It reminds me of Mission Impossible.
Every other, yeah.
He's gone rogue. We got to get him. The company has turned on you.
Take care of him.
there's a lot of distrust in general in the 90s, right? People are just bucking against the system. That's where you get this whole attitude era coming from. And it's questioning his boss basically gets him killed. And so he dies, but because of all the lies that he's taken, because again, he was the best assassin on earth, his soul goes to hell. But he makes a deal with not the devil. I think it's important to say. He makes a deal with a demon named Malboja. Malboja is like the governor of hell. He's not necessarily the president, but he has clout, but he's not running things.
He's got hell juice.
Yeah, he's not running day to day stuff. But Malboja's like, yeah, serve as the leader of my army of hell, and then you can return to Earth and be with people that you care about, like your wife. So he's like, I'm with that. But Malboja being a demon, every time you make a deal with a devil or a deal with a demon, there's always a catch. So Malboja's like, yeah, you can go back to Earth in 5 years. and so he leaves his body in hell, basically deteriorating and stuff, there for 5 years before honoring the agreement. But when Al wakes up, he has amnesia. So it's like, not only does he not know he's dead, he didn't know he made a deal with the devil, none of that kind of stuff. But it takes him a while. He gets his bearings. He finds his wife, his loving, gorgeous, beautiful wife, Wanda, who is not with him anymore. He's not living in the house that they bought anymore. She's moved. And not only has she moved, but she's moved on to his boy, Terry. And Terry and Wanda have a child together named Cyan. But the big deal about that was Al was unable to produce children with Wanda. So it's even the bigger knife in the gut that he was able to give his wife something that he couldn't. You find out that Spawn has a demonic clown guide straight from hell called the Violator. He's a vile and disheveled clown man, and he reveals that he's there to make sure Spawn keeps his deal with Malboja. Kind of works for Malboja and stuff. Spawn gets tight because he's like, what do you mean I have basically a probation officer walking around with me, checking up on me? I'm not with that. So they get into a big fight, and Violator takes on his bigger demonic form, which looks crazy. He's like one of those
demonic Spawn.
Also, kind of looks like it definitely looks like a rock album cover creature thing, but it also reminds me a bit of two things. One, the roach thing in Ben in Black. The big roach, sugar, water, sugar, water, more sugar. That, and it reminds me of one of those weird creatures in that Mortal Kombat sequel. Where remember there was like one of those weird CGI
just transformed
into some weird CGI creature. But
Shang Tsung, Liu Kang.
Yes, but yeah, Violator takes on his bigger demon form, and Violator is way more inept with fighting and using his demon powers because he's been working in hell for quite some time.
The secretary of hell, if you will.
Yes. And so he rips out Spawn's heart in the comics, and Spawn just regenerates a new one. But they continue to go at it before Malboja is like, whoa, kids, and pushes everybody aside and is like, listen, y'all shouldn't be doing this. And by the way, Violator, you're stuck as a clown because you're just basically acting up too crazy. So I'm going to trap you in a clown form. And Al, come on, bro. We had made a deal. You said you were going to lock people up for me. And, not lock people up, kill people for me, send them to hell. Serve in hell's army as its leader and general. And you're on Earth. So I kind of made good with you. So you have to make good with me. So, Spawn kind of does spend the rest of his life working for hell, but he finds his own kind of way to do it. The same way Malboja kind of tricked him with the deal, Spawn is kind of tricking Malboja and the demons of hell by doing good with his bad powers, if that makes any sense at all.
Loopholes, ladies and
loopholes. He's working for loopholes. So he serves hell, but he uses his ability to kill like murderers and like the KKK and like child molesters. People who are gonna go to
hell anyway. Yeah.
Basically, child molesters, child killers like Billy Kincaid, the ice cream man. That character, that villain, appeared in Spawn and killed over 30 children. And after Spawn was done with him, Billy was found nude with jagged popsicle sticks buried into his flesh, hung by chains in his own house. So
Wow.
That's what happens when you deal with Spawn. A little while later, Spawn becomes king of Rat City, basically a slum filled with homeless people. That he is basically their champion. And he meets a guy named Cogliostro, who was created by Neil Gaiman. We'll get to that in a bit because there's some interesting tidbits there. But Cogliostro is basically this shadowy and mysterious figure that befriends Spawn and explains that he used to be a Hellspawn too. But he saved his last little bit of necroplasm, the energy, the energy from hell that keeps them on Earth. He kept a little bit, saved a little bit so he could stay on Earth. Eventually, down the line in the comics, Spawn is able to defeat the demon Malebolgia, but because Malebolgia's seat is now empty, it is asked of him to become the general or leader of hell, take Malebolgia's spot as governor of that specific sect of hell, and he's all like, nah.
I'm good.
Right, but Cogliostro, who's at that point became his trainer, his confidant, convinces him to take the throne and kind of improve hell. And that's one of the big major arcs in the story. It's also revealed that Cogliostro is Cain from Cain and Abel from the Bible. I was kind of like, what? Because we don't get none of those vibes in the film.
Indeed.
I don't feel like we got any of those vibes in the film. But
as we're going through, I'm just like, nope, not in the movie. Nope, not in the movie. Nope, not in the movie.
Yeah, but that's basically the origin story of the character. Here's a little bit of the facts and figures with it. The guy is black, white, red, and green, which I think serves a purpose, especially when you consider that a lot of the earlier characters that we know, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Spider-Man, they kind of lean more on the blue, yellow, red kind of side, bright, vibrant, flash, glowing and stuff. This guy's black, white, red, the color of blood, and then green, which is often used to show like the necroplasm, like the actual what is that, evil essence of evil, green
powers, I guess.
Yeah, like just the evil incarnate that comes from him. Definitely got like some kind of Spider-Man Venom eyes going on. Todd McFarlane, very famous for his run on Spider-Man.
Because of McFarlane, makes sense.
Very famous on his McFarlane's very famous. I think writer and artist for the Spider-Man series. So that's another number one that was out that he created that sold millions. So this guy was on a roll in the 90s.
And he knew what he was doing, so that's...
Now, how do you feel about the fact that you have the Spider-Man like eyes? But you also have actual eye holes, right? Because he has green eyes, but you just have the decals of the white there. Do you like that addition? Do you think it should have just been... Because the guy's, besides those eye holes, 99.3% covered in costume?
Yeah. And out of the costume, it's kind of burnt.
Yes.
Crisp.
But how do you like the eyes? Did you prefer them?
I didn't have a thing for them. You know what I mean? Being that who's the boss man behind it.
Yeah. It gives a good visual when it's dark. Because if his eyes were covered, then you would just see a glowing green man.
Yeah.
But those eyes, they kind of remind me of how you see often Darkseid's eyes are animated,
right?
Where they're just glowing through the skull, kind of like you can just see the light, the vibrance of them. But we talked a little bit about it before. His source of power is necroplasm. It's this ether of energy that comes from hell. And it allows him to have superhuman strength, durability, shoot, blast, teleport. Not really fly, but glide. We see a little bit of that in the film.
And he can make his cape bigger and smaller.
Yeah, he can. He has super speed, mutation, and shape-shifting effects also. But yeah, like you said, that high-collared cape, kind of like a Dracula vampire-esque high collar to it, is symbiotic. Again, the nods to Venom and stuff like that. I thought that was kind of like, he's like, I'll do it, but it'll be a cape. So it's symbiotic. It's connected to his central nervous system, which means it can work independently of its user. First thing I thought about when I thought that was how we saw the symbiote work in Venom, where a lot of the times it wasn't him trying to protect himself, but the symbiote trying to protect him. And so in a lot of ways, this cape does the same thing. If Al Simmons is not in a position where he can help himself, the cape will act on its own. Right. Very similar also to Doctor Strange.
I was just thinking that.
The cloak of levitation. That's a cool name, Cloak of Levitation. I wish this one had a cool name too. This one is called Letha of the Seventh House of K. Or Letha in general. Mm. And it's a demon parasite cape. It uses human souls. Oh. It doesn't necessarily need necroplasm. It can use some human souls to power itself up. But besides the long flowing red blood cape, the green eyes going through, and the head to toe black and white suit that Mr. Spawn / Al Simmons rocks. He also has skulls everywhere, spikes and chains. He has spikes on his gauntlets, chains everywhere.
On demand.
Chains on demand. Very metal looking costume. Like I said again, this guy basically looks like he would hop out of a cover of any 90s rock album. But with his like ethereal powers, like his hellish powers, he can detect pain, anger, and misery. A spawny sense, I guess, if you want to say anything, and it lets him tell when something's going wrong and when he can feed on those who deserve to be fed on, or take care of those that deserve to get got. But when I think of that kind of character, a couple of other characters come to mind, and they could be inspirations or it could just be some similarities. But I find him very similar to like Ghost Rider. How Ghost Rider makes a deal with the devil, has a bunch of chains, really sort of kind of like edgy as well.
Right.
And is doing bad for good. And you can't talk about doing bad for good without talking about Punisher. And the Punisher aspect that reminds me of that, I think there's similarities with Spawn, is the idea that necroplasm there's a finite amount of it.
Right.
If he uses too much of it, he goes back to hell.
Yeah.
In the video games, they actually had like a necroplasm bar, and you had to keep it, at a certain level, or else you lost the game, basically. And so because he can't use all his cool hell powers all the time...
Can't just go back to hell and go get more?
Yeah, right? Go back to the shop. Recharge. He doesn't mind going back to his regular way of killing people, which is shooting them up. We see some of that in the film. But he uses his expert marksman abilities, even in the Spawn attire. He can just have a bunch of guns and air the place out. So I really think of Punisher when I think of that. The idea that he is the like conscious of wherever he's at, right? Just like ever flowing, ever there, always watching. The vengeful hand of Satan, probably. Reminds me of Spectre. Spectre is also another character, right? He is supposed to be the living embodiment of God's wrath. That's legitimately what the character is called. And so you got to think that they pulled a little bit from there. But when you said vengeance, another character that comes to mind with vengeance is Batman. Whenever you see Spawn on a cross, overlooking the city with his cape flying in the wind, you think of, Batman.
In the shadows.
Which... there's reason for that. Greg Capullo, a very, very prominent artist in today's medium, the comic book medium, did extensive work on Spawn alongside Todd McFarlane. And so really, really knew how to draw Spawn in the way that Todd liked it, in those long flowing images with the capes. Image, no pun intended. And guess where else Greg Capullo worked? He worked at DC. And guess who he drew for? Batman. And so those Court of Owls issues that you read, that were read right here as part of Major Issues Podcast, were drawn by my man Greg Capullo, who brought a little bit of his Spawn flavor to Batman and his cape. So
like that.
I dig it. I dig the cape work. I like the way the character looks, genuinely, overall.
Yeah.
His popularity has dipped significantly since coming out. I don't know if they just ran out of stories to tell with him or what, but
I hear a reboot is in.
Yeah, Todd McFarlane is going to be overlooking our reboot, which is good, and we'll get to that. Why that's good. Hopefully, it gets the taste out of the mouths of those who've seen the 1997 film. But yeah, real quick, the weaknesses of Spawn. He has a finite amount of necroplasm, and when it runs out, he goes back to hell. There is a place called the Dead Zone, which is a heavenly plane where he's basically powerless. And speaking of heaven, any weapons forged in heaven can affect him, which brings up the character of Angela. Do you remember me saying that Cagliostro was created by Neil Gaiman?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So Cagliostro, created by Neil Gaiman. Angela, created by Neil Gaiman. Angela was a character who hunted hellspawns. She was like a heavenly warrior.
Heavenly hitman.
Basically, she's on the side of good. She was a hunter, but more for like a sportsman hunter.
Okay.
If that makes any sense. And she tries to hunt Spawn, eventually doesn't, and then they team up to try to take down Malboja, and Malboja destroys her.
Ooh. Casualties of war.
Now you want me to spill some tea?
Oh, I like
Let's
tea.
spill some tea.
Ooh, I like tea.
About Angela real quick. All right, let's spill some tea about Angela. Angela, like I said, co-created, whatever, Neil Gaiman and Cagliostro.
Mm-hmm.
Our man Chapel. Remember I told you that the best friend of Al Simmons named Chapel was the one who killed him. He was brought in by Jason Wynn to kill him.
Right.
Chapel was created by Rob Liefeld, who created Deadpool, co-creator of Deadpool, who then worked for Image Comics as well.
I like this.
So here we go. Neil Gaiman wanted sole ownership over Cagliostro and Angela, which caused him to get in quite a legal battle with my man McFarlane, Return of the Mac. And they fight over the rights over the character, and they basically come to an agreement that Gaiman can have Angela, but Cagliostro is too big of a character for Spawn for him to leave or for him to, be taken out completely.
Mm-hmm.
And so McFarlane gets to continue to use Cagliostro, and Angela will belong to Neil Gaiman. I say that now because if you were to, let's say, Google the character of Angela, the comic book character of Angela. Matter of fact, I'll do that right here on air, right? Let's do that right here in studio.
Tease woman up.
But I think Angela looks awesome, by the way. You tell me how you think this character looks. Pretty, that's also pretty 90s though, right?
Right.
Also pretty 90s, yeah. So Angela now, seemingly a free agent, is then written to be, if I'm not mistaken, I just want to double check real quick. Yeah, she is written to be the sister of Odin's son and Loki. Neil Gaiman takes Angela, runs with her to Marvel Comics, where now she is a staple of Marvel Comics, a former member of the Guardians of the Galaxy, and sister to both Thor and Loki. How do you feel about that?
The slickness.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that's kind of slick right there, though.
That is a lot. Now, remember, I had randomly brought up the fact that Rob Liefeld owned Chapel, the original person who kills Al Simmons. The reason why I brought that up is because Rob Liefeld eventually, after getting into seemingly some shady stuff, where he was like making comics on the side of making comics on the side, he is ousted as the CEO of Image. Because they could vote. They all created this thing, this company, so we could vote and we can push people out. And one of the people that they pushed out was Rob Liefeld. But if I'm not mistaken, I think he quit before he can get pushed out. You can call that what you want to call it.
Right.
So he is gone.
It's cold in the shade.
He is gone when they create the Spawn movie, which means that if they wanted to use Chapel for the Spawn movie as a person to kill, Al Simmons, they would have to pay directly Rob Liefeld, who owned the character. So instead, it was retconned, and the person who ends up killing Al Simmons is a woman named Jessica Priest, and that also happens in the movie. So I thought I'd spill some creator tea on here. Quite interesting, right?
Oh.
Sort of, kind of interesting. I figure we get into something interesting before getting into the dumpster fire that is the 1997's Spawn. Just want to preface by saying that it's one of the first films to feature an African American playing a major comic book hero.
Mhm.
Asterisk, 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 asterisk. I say all those asterisks because it's not the first film to feature an African American like comic book hero.
Right.
Because you have things like Meteor Man.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to say, starring role in an actual comic book character, because I don't know if Meteor Man had comics, you would say Steel.
Steel. I was
But
just thinking that.
which came out the
Shaq?
same
Hold
year.
on
It
for a
came out the
second.
same year.
Oh, it did?
Yeah.
Yeah, but so did Batman.
Right.
Forever.
Yeah. Oh, don't even remind me of that. That was a bad year. This in general was a bad year for comic book movies. But anyway, the triple asterisk is that Steel, right,
Mm-hmm.
did not have his own comic. So Spawn, Michael J. White, who plays Spawn in this film, is the first African American to play a major comic book hero who is the title of a major comic book of his own. Not a side character, not a character made up for a movie. The title character from a comic book, first African American actor / character to be up on the silver screen. I want to, before we get into that idea, I want to talk a little bit about the idea of this African American character, because people were giving Todd some slack, not because the character was black, but the fact that the character is black for basically an issue before he is completely covered from head to toe.
Mm-hmm.
So does it really matter if the character is black? I'm gonna pass this very, very loaded question off to you.
I mean, he doesn't. From what I know. Okay, so then that means that happens, and then he doesn't at least like suit down at all.
No, not really. That's a movie thing, and that's more because of the. I mean, you're an actor, right? You want to be seen,
right,
playing the character. And
I mean,
stuff.
in the comics anyway.
Probably on and off, but by that point, it's like unmasking Deadpool. Deadpool could have been Asian, right? He would look the same
true.
after the fact anyway.
He was burnt to a crisp too. So it's like,
yeah. So I mean, do you want to give my man's credit or not? I mean,
I will, because I like
with it.
I like the movie anyway.
It took balls in 1992 to make your solo character black. I mean, you had Jon Stewart, and you have your Static Shocks and stuff that come, but I think it's a big deal. I think it's a big deal. And in the title role of this, you have Michael Jai White. Jai White. I'm saying Jai. I think it's the I that gets me all confused. Who plays Albert Simmons, aka Spawn, fresh off of his role as Mike Tyson in the HBO HBO TV movie Tyson. Didn't know that either. But what I did know is that my man Michael Jai White loves comic book properties, or just like
that's nice.
properties.
Right.
He's my man Gamble in Dark Knight, aka Enough with the Clown. Which maybe that's a callback to this movie, right?
I want to say. I'll take that. I'll take that. Yeah,
Michael Jai White was like, I'm tired of clowns talking
I will
crazy.
forever hate clowns.
Forever. He played Darkseid on Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. He had a small speaking role in Static Shock. He was Jax in both Mortal Kombat Rebirth and Mortal Kombat Legacy. And if you turn on your TV right now, he is Bronze Tiger on Arrow.
Yes.
So
I knew he was. Yeah.
He plays Bronze Tiger on Arrow. So he kept himself afloat with these properties. Got to give my man respect for that. I love when you can just open up an IMDb and it's just like, oh, I know that. Oh, I know that. Oh, I know that. Wow, he's killing it. Cool. He also knows like 6 different forms of martial arts.
Yeah, he's a certified.
He's known as a certified badass.
Hands. He's got hands.
He's been in music videos like doing martial arts. He was in that music video with Nicki Minaj, Your Love.
Oh yeah,
where he is her sensei. So my man has been around, and 6 forms of martial arts is no joke. So he's not really known much for his acting or in being a leading man, but they gave him an opportunity in here. The person with the biggest marquee in this is probably John Leguizamo.
Yeah.
I mean, you have Martin Sheen. We'll get to him in a second.
I probably wouldn't think about this movie whenever I do think about this movie. I do think of Spawn, but it's just as much I think of
John Leguizamo, right?
As the Violator, yeah.
John Leguizamo plays the Violator in this, and his name was the first one that comes up in the credits because I want to say he's the highest paid. He's coming right off of The Pest, literally that year. Super Mario Brothers, which I mean,
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
one day we got to tackle that movie. That's gonna be a fun one. Yeah, Super Mario Brothers, Carlito's Way. That's critically acclaimed.
Yeah.
So that's there. And the only person really worth stating is in this film is Martin Sheen as Jason Wynn. Al Simmons is nefarious commanding officer, basically. Martin Sheen agreed to do this film because basically he just wanted to do a comic book movie. That was like it. I guess his standards weren't that high, but then again, right? This is the 90s and Spawn was on fire. So it's the idea like let's say there's a list of crazy comic book properties, but once something jumps off, like imagine if they were going to do a Deadpool movie in the 90s from his height in X-Force and stuff like that. Like you want to jump on those projects as early as possible. So, I'm kind of sort of glad that he was able to jump into Spawn. But for those at home, because I love to drop little nuggets, what can you remember what the other comic book movie Martin Sheen was in?
I cannot.
My
it's
man,
just
Martin
I see
Sheen.
him. It's just I see him now and his black hair.
Let's take off his black hair and his goatee. Do you recognize that face anywhere? Maybe. What if I told you that my man Mike I keep on wanting to call him Michael Sheen. My man Martin Sheen played a very tragic role in Amazing Spider-Man.
Oh, he was Peter's father.
He was actually Uncle Ben.
He's Uncle
He's
Ben?
The one, yes.
He was Uncle Ben?
Uncle Ben Parker. He's the one that does the whole, if you have a responsibility, then you have a right.
That was him?
Yada, yada, yada. That was Martin
How?
Sheen. Martin Sheen.
Oh.
So you have Jason Wynn and Ben Parker. Those are Uncle Ben, bro. You forgot one of the Uncle Bens? You like the other Uncle Ben more, right? From Tobey Maguire's Uncle Ben.
I do. I kind of, not even, I just kind of like, I thought I was, man, listen.
And now is maybe not the time to say this, but we still are missing our Uncle Ben from Homecoming. Still don't have a casting on that guy yet. We're
going to be all right. We
on
don't
Homeboys,
see that no more. Tom Holland.
I was going to call him Todd Harlan. This Todd thing is driving me crazy.
Yes.
Tom Holland. Okay, we got some of the bigger names out of the way. I'll do my man Cagliostro. Nicole Williamson, who was played in Mice and Men, in the 60s, plays Cagliostro. And the reason why I'm naming him is because this was his last movie before his death. He died considerably some time after, like 13 years after, but this was his last feature film. So yeah, let's just get into this film. Why do you like this movie? before we get into a full recap, why do you like this movie?
To be honest, it was probably like one of my first superhero movies that I got exposed to.
That makes sense.
And I just thought his suit was freaking cool, man. Like he was badass, dude. Not only did he have powers, but he had all the guns.
All the guns and all the bullets. It's kind of weird sometimes to see him with all the witchcraft stuff and guns.
Yeah, so he's got all his bases covered. He's got the magic and he's got the physical stuff, the guns.
Yeah. When I hadn't seen this film in quite some time, and I thought that I liked it the first time going around. I probably did like it the first time going around. I don't know if you see my Halloween costume right now, but I'm currently dressed as a snooty comic book movie reviewer. So that's the role I'll be playing for the rest of this podcast, because after watching it as a grown man, I like to call myself a grown man. I think I'm a big boy. After watching it as a grown man, this film does not age too well.
I mean, it's funny because since watching this since I was way younger, I've also seen it on TV at least once a year, and every time I do see it, it always catches me, and I'm just sit there and watch it, and before I know it, I'm watching the whole thing.
Yeah.
So I do know the parts that are bad.
I mean, you also there's parts that you remember.
Yeah,
you know?
but visually for Spawn and stuff like that for the main character, it's pretty damn cool.
I remember his death. I remember his short training montage.
Right,
We'll get to all
right.
that in a bit. I remember the coming through the ceiling stuff. There's certain parts of that movie I definitely remember. There's certain parts of that movie I definitely don't, and there's certain parts of that movie I couldn't have remembered because as a kid, none of that meant anything to me.
Right.
So as an adult, like I kind of understand the deal with the devil more and all those kind of stuff there. Whereas as a kid, that could have all been in Japanese for all I care. But this film reminds me very much. I don't know. This is gonna sound odd. It reminds me of two things. It reminds me of like MySpace, right? And Twisted Metal, the video game series Twisted Metal. So it reminds me of MySpace because it reminds me of all the graphics and stuff we used to put on our pages.
Mm-hmm.
And going back now, like if you were to go look at your page as an adult, was it cool? Was it cool for then? Was it cool ever?
I think it was cool for.
You understand? It wasn't cool ever. So you start questioning it.
But then when you go back to see it, it's like, what the?
You start questioning it, and you start going, well, it's there. I must have thought that was cool, you know? So you start questioning, was it ever cool? Like, first thing you thought is, it must have been cool for the time period.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start thinking harder, and you're like, but was it ever really cool? Or is that just what we were doing at the time? And then Twisted Metal, because every time it got to a part of special effects, it looked like a cutscene from Twisted Metal, where it looked like a PlayStation cutscene.
I mean, every time they went to hell looked pretty crappy.
It did look pretty crappy. But supposedly the story on that was that the film was basically done, and they went to do screeners for it, and everybody loved it, so they upped the budget for it, and randomly at the last minute, the 11th hour, decided to add up the special effects shots from 70 to 400. And that also meant that they had to get it from different animators so that they could spread the work to get the work back soon enough to have the effect shots for this movie. Supposedly some of these hell shots were given to them like 2 weeks before the film. Whatever. And you can see some of it. You can see some of it in the film. But
yeah, being as old as we are now, looking at hell, and anyway, it's just like.
Well, here's the thing. When was the last time you seen Jurassic Park? Been a minute?
Been a while, but I still remember.
You remember things?
Yeah, I do.
Jurassic Park comes out 4 years before this movie. So when you look at special effects, right? When you try to like.
Oh no.
yes.
Oh no.
Terminator 2 comes out considerable amount. Terminator 2 comes out roughly in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Like I want to be like, but for the 90s. But then it's like, well, we made dinosaurs come out. How much better could it be? I don't know. Yeah, 1991 is when Terminator 2 comes out. So you had robots turning into people and people turning into robots back then. You still couldn't manage to get those special effects in here. But anyway, to recap the movie a little bit, and this is going to sound like a lot of the echoes from the comics because it basically is a lot of what the beginnings of Spawn was as a character.
Right, for the most part anyway.
Yeah. So you have Michael J. White playing Al Simmons, a Force Recon Marine colonel and Black Ops operative. The movie starts off with him blowing up. He has like this rocket that can split into smaller rockets.
Right.
And they're all homing on targets. And so he blows up some people that we find out are innocent people.
I remember that being terrible too because it just looks like something out of Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah, like the first Metal Gear Solid.
The first Metal Gear Solid.
Because what happens is he goes to a control tower, and from the control tower, not from anywhere else, from the control tower, the rocket shoots through, blows up that's like the windows of the control tower, and then when the rocket splits into the smaller rockets, we see it all from the viewpoint of like night vision goggles.
Night vision.
And so it's just computer rendering. They blew up a fake plane. It doesn't blow up how a plane should, but we're led to believe that this guy is a Black Ops badass and that he could take out a whole plane full of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he reads in the newspaper like innocent people die or whatever, yada yada, and his boy is with him in the car, and he gives him a newspaper. There's a newspaper about it, like, oh yeah, innocent people killed from a mishap or yada yada, and so Al's all like guilty over it. He's all like, oh man, what's going on? And Terry, his best boy, is like, nah, don't worry about it, bro. That's just Win. Win sometimes be getting his intel wrong, and don't worry about it. So Al, just like in the comics, starts asking all kinds of questions, tells his commanding officer, the head of the covert government agency, that he wants to get out. And that does not go well. In like many cases where you try to get out of a secret organization in which you kill people, Jason Wynn is all like, nah, you can't get out. You sure? And he's like, yeah, I got to get out of here. So he's like, all right, just one last mission. Yeah. Don't worry about it. You're right. Matter of fact, you're good. You can get out. No one will bother you. No one will mess with you. You're fine. We'll let you out clean slate. But before you go, we would like you to go to North Korea to infiltrate a biochemical weapons plant.
So yeah, one more for
the road. And you're going to go by yourself. Like, none of this is shady at all. It's like, we'll just put you on one mission by yourself where you're surrounded by dangerous chemicals. And you got nothing to worry about. Once you're done with that,
you're out.
You're out of here. Also, did you notice in his like little lair, he has like paintings of explosions in the background,
like pictures of a mushroom cloud.
Mushroom clouds. Like he has pet scorpions that are just in like on his ashtray. Yeah, it's in his ashtray. He's doing like literally every mustache twirling.
It's like if you don't know if he's a bad guy, then they really spell it out.
But good old Al, who I'm gonna jump to the conclusion that just the character of Al Simmons is not supposed to be smart, because there's various things in here where he probably could have done something smarter and he didn't. For instance, he comes to this place by himself, taking out people left and right in a weapons plant. But it's like surprise, because then Jessica Priest, the character I mentioned from before, is there with Jason Wynn. Jessica Priest is dressed like a bad version of Trinity from the Matrix throughout this film. Just like leather and diamonds and studs, all kinds of weird wardrobe choices. But Wynn orders his top assassin, Jessica Priest, to murder him while he's on mission. They spray him with some gook.
Yeah, some goop. Green gook.
I'm assuming what they sprayed him with was flammable?
Yes.
Gasoline? Do you not have gasoline around? Like, just pour gasoline on the guy. Or regular acid. I think regular acid would have done fine.
It was premium.
But the idea is that if they're going to set him on fire, set this weapons plant on fire, and then they could just write it off as, well, we destroyed the plant, but poor Simmons, died in the line of duty. And that's basically what happens. He is set on fire, and the flames cause the plant to explode, and Simmons' soul goes to hell. This sequence lasts about 20 seconds. He goes to hell.
Yep.
Malboja shows up looking like some kind of rabbit with mange.
I remember this beat. Every hell shot was terrible.
No, I would love for you to defend Malboja.
I can't defend it.
As a matter of fact, if it's been some time since you've seen my man Malboja,
it was like something out of like Devil May Cry. Devil May Cry was made for PlayStation 1 or N64.
I guess. So this is Malboja in the comics. Kind of looks like a big version of the Violators.
He looks better there than in the movie.
Well, he just looks like a big version of Violators' final form.
If they would have did a slideshow, I probably would have preferred a slideshow.
Now that's Malboja in the movie.
I mean, it was nice when.
What is that?
When I was younger.
What is that? That's some sort of like rabbit thing, right? Some kind of weird dog man.
Skin fire goat.
Well, he has hair. They're not going anywhere, but he has
beard.
Hair. One of the most notable things about Mr. Malboja, who, like I said, is basically like the sheriff of hell, is that his mouth doesn't move.
But he's speaking complete sentences.
He is. He's chatting away. He's like, Simmons, if you would like to go back to Earth, you can you just have to lead my army. And he's like, deal. Like right off the bat,
Yeah, I'll go
no
back.
questions,
I'll go back right now.
nothing. He's all like, yeah, I'm with it. Wanda. He does a lot of Wanda.
Wanda.
He does a lot of that. But yeah, if Simmons can become his eternal servant and leader of his army in Armageddon, yeah, you can go back and see your wife. So he accepts the offer, but just like in the comics, Malboja is mal bullshitting, and he basically lets 5 years go by before he returns. He lets Al Simmons return to Earth. So Al Simmons returns to Earth, and he doesn't return in his normal form. He's returned scarred and burnt all over. How do you think those effects look? They're not bad.
No, I thought that was that's one of the best parts of the movie. If somebody's gonna look scorched from head to toe, I think they got that down pat.
Yeah. So he wakes up basically with no knowledge of where he's been. He doesn't remember that he died. He
Hobo Al Simmons.
He becomes hobo Al Simmons. He basically starts rocking the hobo coat. Everybody knows the hobo
coat with the
Keeps him
moped up
warm.
attitude to match.
Yep, and he got the hoodie. He's doing like an electro impression when he first gets his powers. Also like very reminiscent like Darkman. You ever seen Darkman? Yeah, he very has that kind of like look going for him. But he goes to go check up on Wanda, finds out that Wanda is married to Terry, his old boy, and Terry is the father of their child, Cyan.
He's the daddy now.
Now here's my issue. How old do you think Cyan is in this film?
Maybe like 5, 6.
Now, if she's 5 on the dot,
right,
that means the day that Wanda was called,
or at least the same week.
the week that Wanda was called, and they say, "Hey, your fiance Al is dead." That's the week Terry swoops in, gives Wanda the old Cagliostro,
hey, girl,
and Cyan is born. There is no time for grieving in this. My man Terry is ruthless.
He was
ruthless.
I feel like he was plotting all along.
Ruthless. Watch out for that guy.
Waiting.
Yeah. Anyway, soon after, Simmons encounters a clown-like demon named the Violator. We see Violator early on in the film talking to Jason Wynn, basically urging him to destroy the world. Oh, speaking of earlier, we got like a whole story of exposition in the beginning of this film by Cagliostro. He is legit channeling any comic / any beginning of a video game. Once a long time ago, the things of hell, and to use his greatest army, he must do this and he must do that. One of my biggest problems with this film is that everybody talks like they talk in comic books. When I say that is everyone talks very expositionally. They don't talk as if they're naturally in a scene. It would be like if that door opened, right, and somebody came in, and I was like, "Oh, hey, stranger, I'm glad you came in right in the middle of this podcast about Spawn," or else Cloudus Maximus and the Don, who are sitting here, wouldn't be done doing their Halloween edition of Major Issues. Like, you didn't have to say all that, but at every point, Wynn is like, and yes, now our biological weapon, the Heat 16, will be used to destroy, this, that, and the third.
Thank you for that information.
Yeah, very, very expository. And there's ways to convey information in dialogue without it sounding like it's coming straight from a book. But for some reason, good or bad or indifferent, this film chooses to go full comic book with everything. There's about a 3 to 4 minute credit sequence in the beginning of this film where you're looking at basically a Windows 98 screensaver of hell in a circle, and then you just see the names going in.
Some shaky credits.
Some letters are spun backwards and stuff. They were really digging themselves with the special effects budget and the exposition. But anyway, the Violator is sent by Malboja and acts as Simmons' guide down the path of evil, and is basically the guy that's like, hey. You did die. If you don't remember, you died. Not only did you die, you made a deal with Malboja. Not only did you die, you make a deal with Malboja.
It's been 5 years.
Yeah, it's been 5 years. And it's about time for you to start doing what you said you were going to do for him, which is kill people for him to bring to hell. And also to lead his army when Armageddon comes. And Armageddon seems to be coming by way of Jason Wynn because, unbeknownst to Jason Wynn, Violator is trying to push the creation of this bioweapon so that Armageddon could come and hell can come to Earth. But Wynn becomes a weapons dealer, and so Simmons finds out about his new weapon, Heat 16, that's supposed to be like, these are like smallpox and Ebola were child's play or chicken pox or something like that.
Christ.
And at one point, he tosses like a vial. I want to say it's a vial of it to Jessica Priest. And she's all like, oh, wow, cool. And I'm like, that's Ebola and smallpox? Like, put on some gloves. Put on like some safety goggles or something. But yeah, anyway, that's like furthest from any of the problems of this film. But anyway, Cagliostro is still just being mysterious and glowing green whenever the camera looks at him. He wants to let you know that something is up with him. But you have Violator trying to push Spawn to kill Wynn. And when Simmons finds out that Wynn is now a weapons dealer and has this whole Heat 16, he goes to crash a reception where Wynn is seemingly selling the weapon to anybody. Like, I laughed. I was watching this with my roommate.
The highest bidder.
Yes, I laughed and I watched it with my roommate, and I go, you ever notice whenever they do like these weird, dark, black market arms deals, they just like to show that it's diverse by putting people in different hats? It's like it's like, oh, you know, that's the Russian bad guy, and those are the Muslim bad guys, and that guy has a sombrero, so I guess he's the evil Mexican guy. So it's just that you just see a bunch of people. It looks like the United Nations. He's just selling to, I guess, anyone. And in the middle of the open, Spawn just shatters
Crashes
the glass
through the window.
ceiling, literally.
I mean, not the window. Yeah, he does his best Batman impression.
Comes crashing down. Complete with guns, bunch of weapons. Thought the shot looked pretty cool, and then that's when you see like
cape,
the first shot of his flowing cape. I would love for somebody to come in and redo the special effects. I think that
especially Hell,
especially Malboja, the cat, or whatever animal that's supposed to be. I really think that it could be, maybe some of it could be saved. Because when I first started watching this movie, I was hoping that this movie was going to be so bad that it was good. Like, it kind of got that it was bad.
Right.
I kind of feel like it takes itself too seriously. Like, it really believes.
I think so too.
Like, in the same sense I was talking about with the MySpace thing. Like, it really thinks it's cool. It's the 16-year-old that thinks that the name, getting ass 69 XOXO is
funny.
It's
funny
edgy.
Because when I saw Thor Ragnarok and I saw Satyr.
Yeah.
That's
you
exactly
thought of Malboja.
That's exactly who I thought.
Satyr
I was
would
like,
cut
man,
Malboja's head
what could have been?
Yes. And you legitimately, when you see stuff like that, or some of the stuff that they do with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. with Ghost Rider,
right,
would be right up in line with a film like this. But yeah, the first person Spawn kills is Jessica Priest. Just guns her down, kicks her off a like a balcony.
Mm-hmm.
She's dead. Kills a woman, so it lets you know that isn't sexist.
She tried to kick him in the gonads
and
first.
she also did kill him.
Yeah.
Oh,
so she thought.
You made me forget about that gonad shot.
Yeah.
She goes to kick him in the balls, and his belt bites
belt.
it. It
stops
extends
her and bites
her ankle somehow. And Spawn basically has to escape, and because of his armor being a symbiote, and his cape, also acting independently of itself, he's able to get away. You see him use the chains. You see him use the cape to harden around himself. At one point, the cape helps him become like a corner of a building.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he is definitely using that thing for good use. And you end up finding out that Cagliostro was also a Hellspawn. Because Cagliostro is like watching Spawn from the side the whole time instead of straight up saying, hey, by the way, I used to do what you do and I can train you. He's just like in the cut a lot of the time. And so
he kind of lets him fall on his butt.
He finally comes out and he's like, bro, I fight for heaven. I can help you with this. Yada, yada, yada. Meanwhile, Violator is trying to be the devil on his shoulder, pull him to the dark side and say, you know, you need to kill Simmons. But also, you need to kill Jason Wynn. He's also able to convince Jason Wynn to get a operation where he gets like this machine
to put it like a
near his heart
into his heart, yeah.
And so that as soon as his heart were to cease from beating, either from old age or from a assassination attempt, that the Heat 16 bombs would all explode. So Wynn sees this as just a preventative measure. No one will kill him if they know that it will erupt all these bombs, right? But Violator's plan is to send Spawn to kill him, to then enact all the bombs, to then hell's on Earth, and then he could lead all the Satan's army. Basically,
it's pretty solid in a sense.
It is pretty solid. I am not an adult fan of the Violator in this film.
You don't say.
I can see how as a kid, he's the only thing you understand. Because all he's doing is kind of telling kids jokes. He's literally farting. He's literally eating garbage. At one point, he eats a pizza full of maggots. At one point, John Leguizamo legitimately ate that pizza full of maggots and then threw up after the fact. But he is very childish.
He is.
To many people, he's the saving grace, and he might actually be the saving grace. A little bit. But it's kind of hard when the best part of this movie is also the worst part of this movie. The reason why I say it's the worst part is it's not my kind of humor, but the reason why it's the best part is because he did go 110 miles an hour with it.
Yeah. I mean, he had Spawn to bounce everything off of, so I thought that was pretty. I think that's why it's also pretty good.
Yeah. At one point, he like blows his head up and then blows it up as a balloon.
Yeah, like a balloon on his thumb.
He's just doing like
some of the stuff he does is kind of pretty is okay.
It's like just Jim Carrey stuff. So, yeah. It's just Jim Carrey stuff or Drop Dead Fred stuff that he's doing in the background. For my Drop Dead Fred fans out there, but yeah, he's trying to work on both things. So Spawn eventually confronts the Violator after the shortest training montage in history.
I wish we got more of that,
bro. He was just like, just use your head, and he was like, okay, and then he's like, I'm gonna throw this thing and use your spikes,
go
and chains, and he does it on the first try, and he's all like. Good open and shut case, Mr. Simmons. You learned everything.
You got to think because he's a marksman, I guess.
Yeah,
can't really,
I guess.
He
figured it all out, and I guess just in time because he gets into a full-on battle with the Violator, who turns in his demonic form. Cagliostro is able to help him out, and teach him a bit about those powers there, but Al learns that the Violator and Wynn are gonna kill Terry, Cyan, and Wanda. Screw it, right? Let's burn this thing at both ends. When Al comes out of the room, when he comes into his house, his old house or whatever, or the new house that Wanda lives in, Wanda is tied to some kind of apparatus, and Wynn is all like, "You better join Satan's army, or I'll kill your ex-fiance." And I was all like, "Wait, I already joined Satan's army. What's all this about?" Like, yeah, why?
I'm finna lead this.
Yeah, we already did this part. What are you doing? But it turns out that it's not Wanda. We'll get to there in a second, because he stabs her.
Right.
And I was like, no, but he can't do anything to Wynn because if he kills Wynn, Heat 16 blows up. So
I don't think he also did. He know that at the time.
I believe he knew that at the time because it was also kind of said to him like, "What do you care?" Like, just So yeah, because Wynn's trying to take the whole family hostage, even the kids and stuff.
Right.
So
he's doing the most.
Yes. So Spawn's about to kill him. Realizes the whole thing about the device. Uses his powers to pull the device out and destroy it.
Necroplasm.
I literally said, "What?" out loud because I was like, "Oh, so it's like one of those powers. Like you can literally do anything. You could literally extract a piece of electronic out of a living human man without killing him, and then destroy it." Anyway, he's able to destroy it. But Violator sends Spawn and Cagliostro to hell, and they double team Violator. And then Malbo just shows up and is all like,
he actually drags them into hell.
Yeah.
So
Malbo's just tight.
Yeah.
This whole movie, he's like, I got you. You were the greatest marksman, the greatest assassin. Because at various points, he acts as like, why me? Why me? And it's like, bro, you killed a bunch of people on Earth. We saw that. It was kind of cool.
Like
we
half
just
the
want you to
people
do
in
that.
this sector of hell because of you. No.
Yes. Oh, are we? And we're kind of just mulling over the whole like. They do the Rat City thing in this, where he is like the savior of the home. There's this weird homeless area where people just eat rotten food. The one kid that's in everything, his name escapes me. I believe I have it written down here somewhere. I guess I don't. But Michael Papa John, the kid isn't everything. I think that's his name, Michael Papa John. But yeah, there's a scene where there's just homeless people eating homeless things, and the child doesn't want to eat it, and so he is. Oh, it's not Michael Papa John. It's I think Michael Hughes. I'm getting all my names wrong. This is live TV, people. Michael Hughes. Let me get some confirmation on that. I think that's him. Pretty sure. Yes. Yeah, because he was in Kindergarten Cop. He's the one that does the whole vagina and penis thing. He does that whole thing. He was in everything, that little kid. And so he's here in this just to be friends with old Al Simmons, and who also has the dog too. It's like Al Simmons. It's like homeless Spawn, child, and dog. That's like and Cagliostro. And so he has his second family, something to defend, I guess. And so he's in this final battle of hell, and Spawn is able to decapitate the Violator with his chains. And then
necroplasm.
No, he's able to do something. No, it's something else.
He stabs him in the neck.
Something else. He does something else to Violator, because then it's all like, okay, we're done here. And then he disappears, and then Violator comes back through the wall. Cyan sees Violator and is all like, yes. No, Daddy. And then he goes and
grabs him, and then
he goes to eat him. And then Spawn is able to
do the whole
send
all
spikes
over the body.
All over his body. And I seemingly kill Violator or destroy Violator. So Malboja has a little talking to Spawn. I don't know if you remember this part, but this part was damn near hilarious. Where Malboja's like, you failed me, yada, yada, yada. Be prepared to take on all of Hell's army for, like, not doing what I say.
And they're all Spawn.
They're all Spawn. They're all doing, like, about 4 minutes, 4 seconds of animation and backwards and forwards. So it's like, yeah. It's like all this weird stop motion animation. Terrible, still terrible. Think of the dog, man. Think of all that. It was so bad. But anyway, he is like, yeah, you're gonna have to face the demons of Spawn and hell. Yeah. Spawn just like green, there's like green chains come out of Spawn, and he just starts destroying all of them. All the hell, all the hell Spawn. But he's all like, oh, they're gonna kill me. Well, I'll just kill them all first. And it's just,
which makes sense because he kind of is the leader.
Yeah. They arrest Win. Violator's head comes off, and he tells, I think, Wanda, "Hey, you want a little head?" So there's that.
Some necroplasm.
No, none of that necroplasm. None of that necroplasm. And then Spawn, realizing that there's no place really for him with Wanda, and there's no place for him really in hell, decides he's just gonna hang out in the Rat City with the homeless people and sometimes do good things and be on Earth and have powers and stuff. And it just ends like in the most 90s way, like he's on top of a church.
On top of it, yeah.
And that's it. That's about it with Spawn. I would watch it. I would recommend watching this to laugh at it, to joke on it.
There's certain things in there that's just
real, like
when it's terrible.
It's very bad. Much like, to tell you the truth, it's very much like Super Mario.
My favorite things are the 20-second training montage, which I wish we had. Even as a kid, I already knew, like, I wish I had more of the training.
Such a small,
that was they could have did like so much with that.
It was such a small part, but such a big moment.
That every time he used his powers,
yeah,
and everything. I want to say that's the Violator.
Yeah. I mean, the director on this was a man named Alan. Nope, that's not that. It's Mark A.Z. Dippy, and this is his only theatrical release.
Wow.
So
I wonder what he did after that.
I think he did like a bunch of like cartoon stuff and TV stuff. Maybe. Yeah, he's co-founder of the animation picture company. So there is that. And he supposedly worked on some of the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park, but I don't know where that talent went because it was not. It was not. It was definitely not displayed here. Some more fun facts, because that's what I'm about. We already talked about Chapel, right? Rob Liefeld removed as CEO, so they had to make the killer of Spawn be Jessica Priest, and that also carried over into the comics. After this, in 1997, they wanted to do 2 sequels, Spawn and Spawn: The Ultimate Battle.
What?
Yeah, I don't know. They literally to be released in 98 and 99.
Live action?
Live
action? Ooh.
To be released in 98 and 99 respectively, but none of these came to fruition. And they've been saying that the sequel for Spawn has been in what they like to call development hell. But like you said, Todd McFarlane, the scriptwriter, has now completed a script for a reboot, and it will be out maybe next year.
Wow.
Fingers crossed.
Wait, I see here.
Yeah. Yes,
really?
Yes. We'll get to that in a second. But Columbia Pictures showed interest in making the film of Spawn when the comic book was launched in 1992. But what happened was negotiations fell through because McFarlane wanted creative control. That man has wanted creative control from the get.
Yeah,
this is at least
for real,
running.
man.
This is at least a running thing. And he also created McFarlane Toys. And he made tons of money
I always
off
heard that
of McFarlane Toys. These very lifelike action figures. What I guess sometimes not even action figures. They were just used for display sometimes. And a lot of those toys were centered around Spawn. So he's always wanted the creative control. He eventually sold the film rights to New Line Cinema for $1 in exchange for complete creative input and merchandising rights.
That's not bad. That's not bad at all.
But this could have been a much different movie, Cloudus Maximus, because supposedly the original choice to direct this film was a man called Tim Burton. Isn't that absolutely
that is
bonkers?
Interesting AF.
Absolutely bonkers. I love Tim Burton, and Tim Burton had made the 1989 Batman film. Tim Burton was also supposed to direct the early 2000s, 1999 Superman film. So Tim Burton was having a rough end of the 90s because people were thinking about him but not letting him do anything. I said that John Leguizamo ate a bunch of live worms that he then vomited after taking that take with the pizza. But one of the other things about John Leguizamo in this film is supposedly that suit was very hard to get off, and at one point he ended up relieving himself in the suit because it takes so long to get on and off. Michael Jai White, it was tremendous in this film, like I said, or as good as he can be.
Yeah, I think
some of the yelling into the Wanda, no, or some of that's a little bit whatever. But the real shame is that we didn't get to see him do more martial arts in this, and that's probably because of the prosthetics of that suit. That was back when things was still rubber.
Yeah,
that was back when it was still rubber and like one part. So they probably had to sew like staple you in it. Then they had to destroy it and then make another one.
Wow,
when
that is a pain.
It was probably one of those situations there, but yeah, man, this movie existed and it's still out there. I think it's on Netflix right now if you wanted to see it.
Yes.
But
I'm very interested to see what the reboot is going to be because
you're still giving it a thumbs up.
I'm still gonna give it a thumbs up, and just off of nostalgia alone,
I'm gonna give it a thumbs down. So that will keep us right there, even.
We're even.
We're just like Spawn. We're not in hell and we're not in heaven. This movie deserves, just like Spawn, to ride the middle rail, as it deserves to do. It's not so bad that it's good, and it's not a good movie with bad parts. It just is a movie. It's just there. But let us know how you feel because, I mean, come on. It's not just our opinions out there in the world. The clique is out there. Let us know how you guys feel and if you thought that Spawn aged well or not. I thought it would be cool to end this podcast in the most Halloween way possible.
This is Halloween.
I love that movie. By discussing and directed by Tim Burton. By discussing some of the scary slash spooky slash haunting characters in comic book history. I asked you before this show to jot down some of who you thought were some of the scary characters in comic book history, but I'll give you some right off the bat that we could talk about. I know some that use well, one of the most modern, the Nightmare Batman, who came from the Dark Knight's Metal series of books, especially the Batman Who Laughs, whose crazy Joker smile is out there, but literally all of them are nightmare fuel. A lot of what went on in Dark Knight's Metal is nightmare fuel. So I think those guys definitely should be nominated for some of the scariest characters in comic book history. What do you got over there?
You want all of them or?
Nah, let's go. Let's go. I'll do a couple because I think I have a bunch.
So I have, in no particular order either. I have Scarecrow.
Scarecrow, and Scarecrow's also, besides being scary, uses fear to his advantage, which I mean you could kind of sort of say about Sinestro. So then you could kind of put somebody like Parallax on the list. You know, Parallax, especially like Hal Jordan's scary Parallax with the teeth and the white hair and stuff like that. Some scary, scary stuff. But Scarecrow actually started becoming scary for me with the Arkham games. When they redesigned them,
that's funny because that's how I
the Freddy Krueger-esque Scarecrow, I thought was really, really scary. Deadman. DC's Deadman, a living ghost who embodies other people. While he is a hero, that whole concept is scary, that you're just a ghost, doomed to go from body to body and kind of live your life that way. But he also kind of reminds me of Justice League Dark, which also reminds me of Etrigan the Demon, who likes to talk in rhymes and riddles. Jason Blood is the character's name, and he sometimes subconsciously turns into Etrigan, the rhyming demon of hell, with a flaming sword. So,
was that Raven's dad?
Now that's Trigon.
That is.
Who also should be on this list because of all his eyes and antlers, and he's basically the devil of DC. And if we're gonna talk about devils and we're gonna talk about DC, what about my man Mephisto?
Ooh,
my man Mephisto should be on this list. Kind of looks like a vampire-esque demon man. I know you have somebody who controls a bit of the dark dimension.
I have a Dormammu.
Dormammu, or how Kevin Smith says, Dormammu.
Dormammu?
Terrible, right? Yeah, Flaming Head. That might do it. So I guess you could put Ghost Rider on the list as well. Flaming Heads, Atomic Skull has a skull for a head too, so you can put those there. Couple more I want to throw out there just for like when you talk about like just creepy critters or creatures. The Brood from X-Men, those big roach-like aliens that basically look like the xenomorphs in Alien. Man-Bat.
Ooh, Man-Bat, indeed.
Right? Man-Bat. When you're going to say Man-Bat, how about my man Morbius, the living vampire? That's as Halloween as it gets. Killer Croc. But more when he's like more crockish. More crockish than man. Who you got on your side over there?
I have both. Two goblins, the Hobgoblin and Green Goblin.
I have goblins in here, and I'm gonna add two. The Demi-Goblin, which looks downright crazy as hell. I can't remember the actual story behind the Demi-Goblin, but I know that this is a face that you will not forget. There, look at that guy. Basically riding a flaming glider. And then Red Goblin, which was Carnage on Green Goblin.
That is
out of this world.
That's scary.
And crazy. So if you're going to go goblins, I'm going to go symbiotes. Let's talk Venom. Let's talk Carnage. Let's talk Toxin.
That's funny because I have Carnage on my list too. So.
Bro, the teeth, the mouth. Carnage is definitively the scarier one because of Cletus Kasady.
Yes.
Who was a serial killer. Speaking of serial killers, Victor Zsasz, the man keeping tally marks on his body for the amount of people that he kills from the Batman universe. Known serial killer who literally has the body count all over his body. A newer Batman villain, Professor Pig, who wears a pig mask and operates on people's faces and sings opera and thinks that he's like refined, but he's really just this twisted.
Oh, he's refined, all right.
He's like a weird twisted plastic surgeon, I guess you would say. You got any over on your side?
I have Two-Face.
Two-Face. I don't even really think of Two-Face as a horrifying villain, but
I mean,
how do you look at that face and
the
not
way
get
I
scared
approached it was like who really scared me as when I was a little kid.
If you turn the
You know what I
corner,
mean?
if you turn the corner in an alley,
It's like, oh hey Harvey, oh Harvey, oh
Yeah,
my God,
exactly.
That's not Harvey.
which do you think is scarier? Comic / animated Two-Face with the discolored side of the face, or Dark Knight Two-Face with the burned side of the face?
Animated.
Animated?
Animated, yeah.
You just think like the idea that your skin would turn that color and your eye would be bulging
to see
out.
him turn, and to see him turn. Whatchamacall, Batman Dark Knight? Was it Dark Knight that he was in?
The Dark Knight, yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty. I really like how they did that too.
Yeah.
That kind of scared me.
When he was drinking, when he was drinking stuff and you could see it down his throat.
Yep.
I will see your Two-Face and I will raise you a Mr. Sinister.
Ooh,
who I don't have a bunch of history with, but I remember always looking at that character like, that guy's evil. he had like black lipstick, fangs, mascara, the most flat top hair I've ever seen, and that just spider-like cape that just was like strands of a cape. It wasn't like really one piece of cloth. I thought he was incredibly sinister. I also throw in there Man-Thing, who legitimately, if you see him and you have fear, you will catch fire.
Okay. Wow.
Yes.
Did not know that.
And then Swamp Thing from DC, specifically from the Anatomy Lesson series of books, which is early in the Swamp Thing run, because it's almost written like a horror story. It's written like a horror movie. Swamp Thing just being this creature, almost like Jason, who goes from being dead to completely,
the green.
back into one, and then does murder somebody. So very, very cool there. You could throw in guys like Grundy, also, dead come to life. And let's not forget The Walking Dead. The Walking Dead series of comics.
This is true. All said walkers.
Yeah, all the walkers in The Walking Dead. Basically zombies that have overtaken the earth. And Walking Dead, published by, do you know?
I do not.
Image Comics. Yeah, so Image keeping their finger on the trigger because that is making a ton of money. I think I have run out. Do you have any more scary, spooky?
I'm trying to think like off the cuff.
Off the cuff.
5. Ooh, Grodd is pretty damn scary.
I mean, it's a huge telepathic gorilla. I try to stay away from going too much into Batman stuff because Batman does have a bunch of scary villains. But I mean, we gotta say it, right?
Yeah, you do.
The Joker. The Joker. The man who cut off his own face. The guy who threw, I think it's a Commissioner Gordon, or it's related to somebody, Commissioner Gordon, throws a baby at a woman, and once the woman catches it, shoots her. A man who on the movie screens tries to cut off the sides of people's faces. Just a sick, deranged individual who seems to be getting scarier as the decades roll by.
It's funny because you're saying Batman, and I'm trying to steer away from the Spider-Man stuff.
His half animal, or his half animal, half
That's funny.
Half human people. But yeah, Joker. You gotta put Joker on the list. He is the inspiration for the Batman Who Laughs. And just. He is what people think of when they think of like scary comic book villains, because the idea that he doesn't even have an origin, de facto origin, lends to the fact that he is just this being, this essence, this just scary force that exists in DC's universe. But if you guys know any other spooky characters or scary characters, you could let us know. Send us an email on Twitter. Send us an email on Twitter. Yeah, try that. Send us an email in general. Hit us up on Twitter or Facebook. And you can hear your opinions read right here as part of the Major Issues podcast. And we'd like to take this time to thank all of you guys who have liked, shared, and subscribed to Major Issues podcast. And if you don't know how to do any of those things, or this is your very first episode of Major Issues, you can find Major Issues Podcast wherever podcasts are found, at Stitcher, Podbean, Podcast Addict, Spotify, Google Play, YouTube, wherever podcasts are, you'll find the Major Issues Podcast. If you have a iPhone, you can just use the podcast app that's available on every single iPhone pre-installed, and you can just search up Major Issues. And if you have a regular phone, you can just go to Google, type in Major Issues Podcast, and the very first link will be us. We're right there, baby. We've made it. We're Googleable.
Ooh,
Googleable. Yeah, so keep liking, sharing, and subscribing. If you could do us a favor, if you want to put some candy in our bags for this Halloween season, send us a review. I mean, if I can choose, I'd let it be 5-star. But let us know how we're doing here as podcasters. It's the quickest way for us to self-correct. And this is our first time doing this run of movies and delving into the latest and greatest things to come to comic books and comic book media. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know where we can improve, or let us know if we have improved by leaving a review on iTunes. And if we get good reviews on iTunes, other people will find us because they will know that this is the place to be as part of the Clique and as part of Major Issues. And as I just previously said, the Major Issues Podcast is brought to you by ComicBook Clique, and you can find all things Comic Book Clique at facebook.com/comicbookclique, Instagram at Comic Book Clique, or use the hashtag Comic Book Clique to talk about the newest, hottest, latest, and greatest things to come to comic books and comic book media. Chat up with me at Major Issues CBC on the Twitter machine. Various other members are on Twitter. You can find us all through there. We're getting some new staff for our social media, so we want to make sure we have people available around clock for your questions, comments, and concerns. And sometimes, if you've just seen an episode of a CW show and you want to chat about it, hit us up. Just read a comic that made your stomach turn? Hit us up. We are here. We're trying to be more engaging to our fan base. But thank you so much for those who have been writing in and have been leaving their comments and our numbers are growing. I've been to the future, so I know we get even bigger. But it's all thanks to you guys. It's all thanks to the Clique. Woo. I think that's a good place to leave this off. Necroplasm. Exactly. But my name is George Serrano, a.k.a. The Don.
I am Yo Cloudus Maximus, and this is Halloween.
Yes, this is Halloween, and this is this has been our Spawn from 1997 full recap and review. But guys, remember, whether or not you celebrate Halloween, whether you're one of those people that likes to put pennies in people's trick or treat bags, that's not good. Whether you still think people are putting razor blades in your apples,
Jesus Christ.
That doesn't happen, people. Whether your soul has been dragged down by some weird dog-looking demon named Malboja, or whether you're one of the very, very few, and I can't understate this enough, few people who still like this movie.
That's me.
Like Cloudus Maximus. Remember that we are the Clique, and you, yes you, are worthy.